Zachariah Jackson, BASA News. Today I'm in Elizabeth, New Jersey, talking to SALAAM ISMIAL about stop racism and stop bigotry. SALAAM, we talked on the phone the other day and you were saying some things about that they're not hiring black teachers in Elizabeth, New Jersey.
Well, it's not just that. They are not doing a lot of stuff that relates to the African American community. And
Meaning like what?
Well, number one, their hiring practices, not only with teachers, but with staff. What I mean by staff, I'm talking about from cafeteria workers to janitorial workers to teachers' aide to security guards. It's just next to none. And the African American community have been in the city for a long time.
Sure.
Before a lot of the other immigrant groups came into town and organized themselves and politicized themselves, and now it seems like the African American community seem to be isolated from the biggest employer in the city, which is the Board of Education.
That's the biggest employer
And it's
in
the biggest,
Elizabeth?
it's the biggest employer in the city of Elizabeth,
Wow.
and most cities, in fact, because we have 29,000 students. We have about 7 high schools and a number of other middle and elementary schools.
Yeah, I have actually 7 high schools here?
Well, yeah, they're broken up in academies and what have you, and so on and so on.
Private school thing.
Yeah. No, they're still public, but they call each house academy, or they may call it something else.
Oh, okay.
We also suffer from the burden of a lot of our students, African American students, dropping out. We are the highest dropout rate in the city. Yes, we're about 17.8 or 18% population.
And do you relate that to the lack of representation to the Black American?
Across the board is we have actually one African American representative on the Board of Education, a 9-member commission. We have I think it's 3 Portuguese American, 2 Haitian American, 1 Spaniard, and 1 Puerto Rican. So it's a diverse board.
Sure.
But the representation and the equity among African American is racial to me.
Are you
Racist.
leaning toward the fact that you believe that the other minorities that's on the board, that's in the school system, cannot help the growth of a young African American?
Well, I think that.
Or or they wouldn't be as concerned as
Well, I mean, everybody, God said He made us in tribes and nations, so we distinguish one from another.
Sure.
I have no problem with other minority groups looking out for their respective culture, their community, their tribe, if you may. But when the situation becomes such that it becomes unfair, that the practice of hiring practices, of the practice of our students failing, the practice of the system itself ostracize a segment of the city, that's a problem. And that's what we face with now.
So over the years, over your 40 years working in civil rights, you've worked with the big names, Al Sharpton, of course, Larry Hammond here in Jersey, Newark, Jesse Jackson, Gregory, what's the Reverend from Brooklyn?
Reverend Buster.
Not Buster.
Not Buster. Sorry.
He
wears
the hat. Walked to Washington one time.
Yes. His name will come to me. Yes. I don't work with them all.
Yeah, you work with them all. Do you feel?
Daltrey, Reverend Herbert Daltrey.
Daltrey, there you go, Reverend Daltrey.
Love him. That's my godfather. Yes. That's a godfather for me. Yes, sir. Brooklyn.
Do you think that maybe like, okay, how did I say this right here without sounding like a bigot? I don't want to sound like a bigot at all. Do you think that as you said, we broke up in tribes, and that each tribe look out after their own.
Mm-hmm. I think I know where you're going with this. But go right
35 to 40 years ago, the African American looked out for everybody.
Yeah.
And by doing that, right, do you feel that maybe we neglected our own because we were looking for that big home run with all of the minorities?
That's a phenomenal statement and question that you put out there, and it's a silent question that I'm hoping some of the people, other journalists out there, get it and speak to that, because a lot of them don't want to speak to the fact that the African American community, this is the 50th anniversary of the death of Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. Martin Luther King, when he done the March on Washington in '63, and then pushed for the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act of '64, '65, and then he was pushing for the Poor People's Campaign. It's always been with a coalition. But here we are 50 years later, but the biggest winners of all these things that we accomplished, that the African American, which pretty much put together, organized, mobilized folks around the civil rights, human rights, social justice, what have you, we have not reaped all the benefit. Other groups have, and other new groups have come into the play and have been benefited from it.
Do you really, me and you've had this conversation, because I've been with you on many missions. Many missions, Salah. And I love you, and of course I love to reach out to you.
Yes, sir.
And, but do you think that, okay, we talked about some similar things like this here.
Yeah.
But do you really believe what you just said, that others have benefited and we haven't? Because, the African American, we have the Black Caucus down in Washington.
Yeah.
Most of the cities are tooled with Black American mayors and things of that nature and stuff. We got congressmen, colleges, universities. In fact, I was just invited down to Lincoln University.
Right.
And stuff. I was down there for the homecoming and stuff. And we have tons of colleges and things. But you think that we haven't won, Salam? That
no doubt. I'm glad to say, knock on wood, I've been a part of some of those wins in my 35 plus years of doing the social justice. However, I think that many of the groups that we coalition with, and they kind of spurt out on some of their own individual issues, and that collectiveness that we're dealing with now, whether it be gun violence, which is a big issue in the African American community that nobody collectively is dealing with. If they deal with it in a subtle kind of sense.
Sure.
Issue of, and of course, we're still dealing with jobs.
Sure.
The issue of course, mass incarceration. There's really not a ground kind of swell of that. But issues that we have taken on in the name of other groups and supportive of. And to this day, we support the immigration situation. We support the gay rights movement. That's big now. We support a number of other social justice groups that's out there now that pretty much have their own agenda and their own mechanism of movement. We was the catalyst of these mobilizations.
Sure.
We was the catalyst of these organizations, and we set the structure for them to exist.
Do you feel, Salam, after your 35 plus years, with hanging with all the big names and doing the work with them, actually, do you feel some kind of minority betrayal?
Wow. Don't give me a lot of trouble.
I'm not trying to get you, but this is BASA News.
I know. I'm keeping it real.
Reverend Zachariah A. Jackson,
100.
head Reverend of the Church of What's Happening Now.
Yeah, that's right. I got you.
Okay. So if you call me in to talk, then we're going to have a conversation.
Yes, sir.
You understand? And if you don't want to have that conversation, we can stop this camera right now.
I know what you said.
Or forever hold your peace.
I know. We ain't going to do that either.
Now, So what do you want to do? Do you
No,
want to?
I want to move on.
Oh,
Your
okay.
question is, have we been betrayed?
Do you feel that way? Do you feel that way?
I think that there's a certain amount of betrayal in terms of the things that we want to accomplish and the things that we need to push our agenda. Mm-hmm. There's not the kind of groundswell of support for other groups that we have helped to mobilize and pretty much modeled for these other groups to push their agenda. I don't see that. I don't see that in the gun violence situation.
Let me say
I just want to say this one thing. And even when dealing with gun violence, they take it and change the narrative.
Sure. To
talk about the sale of guns and gun blocks and all that kind of stuff. That's not what grassroots people in my communities, or in Chicago or Detroit, are talking about. When we talk about gun violence, we talk about a social ramification built on a social, racial, racist kind of condition. That the other groups, the mainstream organization, they narrow it down to the sale of guns and let's just to take the magnum off, and that's not the way we deal with on the ground. So, and then we talk about mass incarceration. In my state, the state of New Jersey, 61% of the whole prison population are African American. Number one in the nation.
Black American.
We have the highest rate of young people, African American youth. I'm not talking about no other group. African American youth, the highest rate of lockups than anywhere in the nation. So, but a whole lot of groups, these various different groups coming to us and say, well, look, let's hub around this thing and put pressure on the status quo and push towards, like we have done on their agendas.
But you know, I hear you talking, and you know what I'm feeling. Mm. You know, Salaam, you know, you see me by myself a lot. Mm-hmm. You know, and people think when they see me by myself, I'm by myself. Mm-hmm. Physically, I may be, but psychologically, I'm not. Right. You know, my family started out in Elizabeth in 1923. Mm-hmm. I lost an uncle in this city, and an iron vat actually fell in the vat. You know, and so we started in this city in 23, and then we moved to Newark after my grandfather died in 25 in the city of Elizabeth. Moved to Newark in 1927. Been in Newark in the Central Ward ever since. I kind of have a sense of where you're going and what you're talking about, and you're not really being a bigot, but I think that, you know, when I look back on the history of my family coming out of Georgia and how we evolved over the years. Now, we've never become rich. We have our problems like many other families. Right. But, you know, it's always one person in the family that grab onto the history of the family. And when I look back on this thing, you know, I see an evolution of how things change, and I kind of know what things are going to do. Did you think that 35 years ago, 25 years ago, when you fought and stood toe-to-toe with, let's say, quote-unquote, the man, for other groups of minority people, and some that looked like you and some that didn't, did you really believe that it was going to be a holy matrimony between your group as a Black American and them? And
you know what? And actually, call me naive. I thought that this coalition that we once had, and you know, and let me just say, I go back to 1983, 84, when Jesse Jackson had the Rainbow Coalition, which was phenomenal. It was a group of all different kinds, every kind of group, all different shades and colors and what have you, different perspectives.
That's why it was called a Rainbow Coalition.
It was a Rainbow Coalition, and the whole concept was to move a unified agenda forward. Sure. And of course, it was very successful. Jesse ran twice for president. He had 3-point-something million the first time out. He had 7-point-something million votes the second time out. And he helped a lot of folks get elected and help other people with that, other movements branch out. And that's what happened after the late 80s. Folks started doing their own thing. But never would I thought that coalition wouldn't stay together. I always thought it would stay together.
But how could it? See, when you take a rainbow, right, rainbow is made of many colors. Right? Many colors come from different places.
This is
and
true.
they mix together, but they're still many different colors.
This is true.
It wouldn't be a rainbow if it all was the same color, amen?
That's right.
All right. So each color on that rainbow, however it got there, right, whether the clouds or whatever, I don't know how a rainbow was made. I know it's up in the sky.
Right.
Pretty when I know that. But each color has its own evolution.
Right. That's
Okay.
right.
So how was it, Salaam, for you and other Black American leaders that had these coalitions? How was it that you, let's say, open up the file and go back 1983, 84, 85? How was it that you thought that you guys was going to actually, mend fully together when your sojourning is so different?
And I'm gonna tell you something. The interesting thing about that is I'm gonna help you. I can fast forward that question. I know, because at the end of the day, as those folks are not there with us, we are still there with them. We still helping pushing their agenda. Rather, you name the agenda from all these progressive groups and the African American leadership, the African American organization, whether it be NACP, whether it be the National Action Network, whether it be the National United Youth Council, whether it be the CORE, which still exists around here, whether it be the Urban League. Regardless of these organizations, we are still pushing everybody's agenda, but not everybody's not pushing ours.
So you're saying these Black American organizations that you name are still pushing everybody's agenda?
Everybody's agenda.
Okay. Oh, that may be true, but then I understand that, and I guess I could see how that is. But still, right, I'm going to ask you this direct question.
Right.
I'm evolved from Newark, New Jersey, right? Okay, I had family in Union County, which is Elizabeth, in 1923. But the heart of me, I go back there, come from Newark.
Right.
And I don't come from the South Ward of Newark. I don't come from the West Ward of Newark.
Right.
I don't come from the North Ward of Newark. I come from the Central Ward of Newark, which is the heart of Newark. I know all about downtown Newark, about the business, Prudential, this, that, and other, all those different things, because that was my playground.
Right, I got
where other wards had they downtown on Bergen Street.
Got you.
Or, on
I think
Springfield
I understand
Avenue.
what you're going.
You understand what I mean? Okay. So I'm more inclined to take a picture, right, downtown in front of City Hall. I took a picture in front of City Hall many times. Because I felt close to it, because why? Whenever we had a parade, I walked right down the hill, there was City Hall, right? You understand? It was nice to see Mayor Kenneth A. Gibson in the City Hall, but there was City Hall. So I was always in the heart of the infrastructure of Newark. I don't come from the suburban part. My whole outlook on things is a lot different than a suburban person that comes from the South Ward.
Well, I mean, if you're suggesting that because we're different, thereby we go and do our own thing, I get that. I don't have to be honest with you, I don't have a problem with people understanding that we have our agenda. I'm just cutting it to the chase. Forget all the semantics. They have their agenda, we have our agenda, and I understand that they're going to be more considerate and be responsible for their agenda. I get that. But what I'm saying to you, but don't call me when you're in trouble. You know what I'm saying? Don't expect me all the time to be there for you when you're not there for us. And you know what? You know what? At this point, that's our fault. That's our laziness.
But why wouldn't they call you when you are mainly like Superman?
Oh, we are the Superman.
See, in other words, you're like Superman.
Yeah, the African American community have been the Superman, and I'm not talking about me in general.
You're more like the bulldozer.
Yeah, African American leadership have been the Superman for the disenchanted, the indigenous, the outcasts, the downtrodden. Come on.
But have you been a Superman? Am I picking up something, Salaam? Am I picking up that maybe you know.
And I'm not just talking about. I'm talking about this is.
You're talking about all the groups, all the Black American groups, leadership. Well, do you think that maybe sometime that fair is fair? You know, when you're playing a game, you know, you shake other people's hand that win because it's fair is fair. But do you feel somewhere deep down inside that maybe the Black American leadership, right, have been so much of a champion of other people's issues that you negated and neglected your own?
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
Okay.
No doubt about it.
So,
I mean, I can give you facts after facts after facts of that. How, I mean, we could look at a lot of our cities, urban cities throughout the country where we got Black mayors, we got Black city council, but our city is depressed. We're still the most locked up. We're still the most unemployed. We're still, you know, what have you. Only 17% of the folks in Newark actually work in Newark. The other ones are interlopers, people that comes into Newark and they gobble up all the jobs and what have you.
Sure.
But not Newarkers. And it's not blaming on Rob. It's just the way it is. And I think that what we have to do and go back to African culture.
African American culture.
African American culture.
Which
yes.
is Black American culture.
Which is Black American. Well, yeah.
Black American culture.
Yeah. So, and I just wanted to be specific because, you know, other groups that come in even from the continent that come here, they pretty much stay within their own realm, and so on and so on. Like the Latino community, they come in from different respective communities, and they stay within their community. In my hometown, Elizabeth, if you go on Morris Avenue, you know what community that is. You go on Elizabeth Avenue, I'm talking about the Latin community, you know what community that is, and so on and so on. They have pretty much set their steps on segments of the community, of the city. And so we have not done that in the African American community because we had left our community agenda dormant. Sure. And I mean, there's no right now, 94% of the people in the state of New Jersey, 94% of the vote, African American vote went to Mr. Murphy, Governor Murphy.
Sure.
And now there's a movement around that called the 94% movement because now we gave you 94% of our vote. Now what we're going to get in return?
Sure.
Are you going to address the mass incarceration? You're going to address the unemployment. You're going to address the school funding.
He has seemed to be fair, has he?
Well, I mean, it's only 9 months in. So, 10 minutes, it's yet to be seen. So, but the point of the matter is we have to start now pushing our agenda and our culture. And the way to do that is we have to come back to ourselves again.
Sure.
And speaking of Elizabeth, why I got this sign here is because for the past 3 years, I've been sitting down meeting without picket signs, without bullhorn, meeting with representatives of the Elizabeth School Board Commission. And I addressed them on a couple of things that is very concerning to the African American community in Elizabeth. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. As I mentioned before, we have the highest dropout rate among African American kids.
Okay.
Just past June, the graduation, we had 1,350 kids graduate. And I went to that graduation. As they walk across the stage, I hardly seen. I couldn't count 50 Black kids, African American kids, walk across that stage. So I went back and I asked the commissioner, and I said, "What is those? I want to know those numbers. I want to know." And of course, the dropout, they never reached that point. So sure. I mean, the dropout happened in ninth and 10th grade or whatever. So I just got some reports back, and we're worse. We're worse than these numbers in dropout rate and suspension and all tardiness, you name it. We're the worst in that in the school district.
But do you think because, SALAAM, when you go to war, right, there's a war, and then there's the end of the war, then there's a ceremony, and a parade, and then the soldiers go home. Did our civil rights leaders, the Black American civil rights leaders, ever go home? Or did you stay in a war?
Well, that's the problem. That's why That's what I want to finish this in Elizabeth, because I can talk about some world stuff. I'm just sticking home right now.
When I say war, well, I'm talking the war at home. Our war has been at home.
Look, listen. That's why that number of African American young people dropping out in the Elizabeth School District is crazy. We went and presented a formula for that. They haven't done anything. We asked them to also, gun violence have been not as rampant as other cities, but it have been rampant.
Sure.
But we have the highest. Mind you, we only 17.8% of the city population. We got the highest. We have the highest murder rate, the African American, in our city. These young people are dying. Nobody else is dying, but our folks, and nobody's dressing it.
What? Go ahead.
No, and I just want to just hear these facts. So we also went to them and tried to come up with a comprehensive plan to deal with, on school-based level to deal with a program or initiative to deal with that. Nothing. Then we asked there is a state mandate called the Omastar Law.
Okay.
And you might have heard about that. Omastar Law was established in 2002, signed into law by former Governor Christine Todd Whitman, to mandate that all school districts incorporate a African American studies curriculum within there from K to 12. Mm-hmm. And most schools don't have it. Probably 95% of the schools don't. And the reason why they don't have it is because nobody brings it up.
Sure.
And we've been pushing it in our district, at least for the last consecutive year. They haven't even looked at it. They haven't really moved to no end on it. And again, and it's consistent with a lot of other stuff. The hiring practice is horrible, African American, whatever. So, so if you go back to that question, what happened to the leadership in my community here in Elizabeth and county and state?
All over the union, all over the states. Every state.
We have pretty much.
Did you guys desert us?
I think we right now as we taping the league, the New Jersey League of Municipalities convention is going on.
Sure.
But I'm looking on Facebook, and you know what I'm seeing that all these mayors, all these politicians doing, they holding parties.
Well,
they're having parties, and do what they do.
They do what they do. But what I'm talking about, I'm not talking.
And the leaders is right there partying with them.
Well, okay, everybody needs.
So you asked me, do they take a break? Yeah, those are kind of breaks they take, party breaks.
Everybody needs a break. Everybody needs a break. Let's be human. No, that's one thing.
But that's not the purpose of the League of Municipalities, is to network and to come up with exchange ideas or whatever. A party is one thing, but I'm just saying, you asked the question, I'm trying to hand it to you.
But what I'm saying is this right here, Salam. If, someone got to cook at home, someone got to have a home-cooked meal. Now, if mama or daddy, right, is not at all cooking a home-cooked meal, and we all eating out of fast food restaurant, then when a home-cooked meal is presented among us, we wouldn't even know how to eat it because, for one thing, it's slow and we don't want it that way. It's more filling, it's more nutrition, but because we are so used to the fast food. Now, what I'm asking you is, I'm not talking about the political leaders that we vote in office. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about grassroots leaders like yourself and others that you know of.
Right.
Did you guys go after a bigger picture and you forgot home?
I don't think that's I don't, in my opinion, my experience, I worked in recent time all over up and down from Boston to Florida, and I think that's not our biggest problem in terms of grassroots leadership. I think the biggest problem with grassroots leadership, we have not able to. This one gentleman used to always say how a spider with a web, how we able to web this spider up, the web put together the web, and we have not able to do that. We all are part of the web, but we're not connecting. And I think we don't have the money or the resources that mainstream organizations have. We don't access corporations. We don't access special interest groups. We don't access those political action committee groups, PAC organizations.
But
we pretty much have pretty much operated on their own. Well, what we don't do, to answer your question, what we don't do is we don't resource each other as grassroots leaders. And that's been a problem, as you probably know. A lot of our grassroots organizations, they don't even have a place to meet.
Yeah. You know? But the thing is this right here, when you talk about others that kind of exit the bigger picture of the civil rights groups, these are common people, grassroots people that's starting up.
That's true.
And they're raising their families and they're doing things,
right.
common things. So we're not talking about Hollywood. We're not talking about the red carpet. We're talking about, maybe that we've been shooting so high that we forgot that there's a low that we need to take care of.
That's true.
It's a poor frog that don't praise his own pond.
That's true.
And maybe we've been going out there and people coming to us, coming to our leaders and things of that nature. And they come to our leaders, and our leaders embrace them and fight their issues. But like each tribal man, right? If I got my tribe, I don't bring my whole tribe to SALAAM ISMIAL. I bring me, right, my chief of my tribe, or whatever, that's next to me, and we come talk to you because you're the big man. Mm-hmm. You follow me? Mm-hmm. So when we talk to you, and we get understanding of dialogue on how things are done and what we should do, when I go back to my tribe, right, I'm not necessarily going to have a big picture of SALAAM ISMIAL. Right. Nor will I have one of Jesse Jackson. Right. Nor will I have one of Al Sharpton. Right? So when I go back there, I'm talking to people and giving them some of the information that you fed me that was good information, and to hopeful that some of these people would rear their families to be the ones that walk across that stage. Right. That what is it? 12-year stage, going to get ready to go to college or going to trade school or whatever. So I understand where you're coming from that. But my point is this right here, SALAAM. How do you come back and work within your community without sounding like a bigot?
Oh, I don't think it's not bigot. I think we need to just go back to there's nothing wrong. Malcolm X said it best. I have to take it. Even Dr. King, if you look in some of his last 67, 60, 68 speeches, and how it's so important that we need to come back. James Brown says, "Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud." We have to go back to that because that's where we're losing. We're losing our self-pride.
But should we say it loud that I'm black and I'm proud, or should we say it loud and say I'm black American and I'm proud?
You know how do you want to say it? I'm just saying we need to go back to...
But what I'm saying, when James Brown said that, right, in the 60s, I imagine?
1968, the 50th anniversary of the song.
Okay. So when he said that, and when you looked at black at that time, blacks had one agenda, 9 times out of 10 they were black American. Amen? Mm-hmm. Okay. But today, I think what you just said earlier is you're alluding to the fact that others are here now, right? Mm-hmm. Now, they're saying it loud, but they ain't saying it loud black American and proud. No. They're saying it loud from the group in which that they come from.
Yeah, and that's okay.
So how are you going to say it to make it okay with your group?
We have to go back to our group, like they go back to theirs.
Oh, so then you have to say it. How are you going to say it loud? So, tell me.
We have to.
If I asked you to say it loud like James Brown, how would you say it loud?
Whatever. I'm saying we have to. Whatever we have to do, we have to go back. Forget about the semantics. We have to go back to us.
But you have to.
Let me just finish. Back to our perspective group. Our group is, you want to call it African American, some people call it Black American, whatever that group. We have to go back to that group. That's the group that that's been neglected, and I've been in the game a long time, and I'm not shooting from the hip. I'm shooting straight from this head right here.
So then, what you're saying, SALAAM, I'm just trying to get an understanding.
I'm very
without sounding like a bigot at all.
No, I don't.
Right, without sounding.
That's not what we're saying. We can always love ourselves and love everybody else too.
But what I'm saying is, you're saying that a lot of groups here, right? Even though they look like us and things of that nature, they're saying it loud, right? But they're black and they're proud over here, and they represent that group in which they come from,
Well,
right?
no, they're not black. They Latino. They are progressive whites. They are Native Americans. They
You
are
said African from the
they're from different perspectives. Asian Americans.
Right.
They from their particular continent and their
And
particular
then you also
culture.
said something from the African continent.
And some that are from the African continent. Those are all these very different groups that have pretty much surround themselves within their own culture in their own way.
So this is what I'm saying.
What we have to do, is just my opinion, what we have to do within our prospective community, we have to go back and, as I heard someone say, my mother used to always say, you have to look inside yourself. We have to look back. You ask where's the grassroots, what's happening? That's what we have to go back to. We have to do some, they keep talking infrastructure. That's what we have to deal with, the infrastructure in our community. And that's
so
only
that infrastructure, Salaam, to get it clear, right? If other groups are identifying themselves by their group, right?
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
How are you going to identify you?
We have to go back to that. We
So-
have to go back to it. We have to go back. That's going to be, it's a relearning process.
Okay.
When go back to Nation of Islam leader, Elijah Muhammad, when the first thing he was talking about is the love of self. He talked about the love of self. He talked about the identity, to give rid of all the false things that were playing upon us.
Sure.
And he pretty much had taught us how to love ourselves. And then from there, to Malcolm, and then there was this what they called the black movement,
Right.
Of the late '60s and what have you. Out of that became the Black Panther Party, who taught again all the. We have to go back to that for a number of reasons. We have to go back to reassess ourselves, loving ourselves again. Our kids are killing each other like crazy.
So when you
they say violent crime is down in America, but it's not. It's not having an impact on our community.
Can we get a clear identity? When you say our kids, you're saying Black American kids.
Yeah,
Black
absolutely, yeah. Of
Okay.
course, of course.
So then, you're saying that. I just want to make it clear, Salaam. That's all. Because we're talking.
Yeah.
You're saying basically that we're going to have to go back to identifying ourselves to build a wall in so many points. Not that wall, but to build some kind of fortress.
Some would like to hear that phrase. Yeah, but I got you.
To build a fortress, right?
Yeah.
To start rebuilding.
Yeah, we have to. And if otherwise we're gonna be constantly left behind. Look, we are dealing with issues now. This is 2018.
Sure.
And we're dealing with issues that we dealt with 50 years ago.
Sure.
When Dr. King was murdered. We need to, and what made us this strength that we have, because of Dr. King, because of Elijah Muhammad, because of Malcolm X, because of Philip A. Randolph and all these other cats that came, and then of course Fannie Lou Hamer, and all these different powerful women, that came up out of the movement, from going back
How
to
would you
Harriet
identify-
Tubman, all these great people that fostered an issue that was basically impacting or progressing our community. It starts within, and we have to go back to that. And we left our house, like you said, with no one at the kitchen cooking, with nobody washing the clothes, and nobody sweeping the floor.
So I want to do another story on this.
Sure.
But this time, I don't want to put it all on you. I want a lot of other Black American leaders to maybe sit down and do a round table on this thing here.
Sure. Very interesting.
I think it's a very interesting topic. I think that from what I see as this here is that, and I'm no leader. I try my best to lead as much as I can, but they knock me down. They say you
Stick with what you know, man.
You don't have no Ivy League degree. Who do you think you are? They try to knock me down, but I pick myself up, thanks to God. But I try. I got the will. I try now. That you knock me down all the time. sit yourself down. You ain't nobody.
Mhm.
Your own people tell me that. But I think that what you lured to is a very important topic. And I knew of this show coming. I knew of this talk coming.
Mhm.
And over the years that me and you hung out with each other,
Yes, sir.
I knew that this right here was eventually going to come.
Yeah.
I seen it years ago.
Yeah.
But now it's coming to in fruition.
Yeah.
Again, as my mother would say, a poor frog has to praise his own pond.
Mm.
And I think that that's where
Absolutely.
you're coming from, because you're seeing a great loss, and you're not seeing a concern from the other groups, other minority groups that you've helped, that you had for them.
Right.
You didn't see that right there. And I think that where you and many other leaders.
And this is no disrespect for none of my brothers from another mother,
Yeah.
if you may. You know,
But I think
it's not happening.
right, where you kind of messed up was that where a lot of people have, where you thought that it was going to be one big picture and one big family, and you start to see that people have their own interests, and their interest is not really your interest, because your interest is a Black American interest.
Mm-hmm.
And other people's interests are wherever they come from.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I understand where you're coming from. I understand. But I also, I don't want to get childish here. But, sometimes it's good to go back to my old stories.
Mm-hmm.
I remember this story about Santa Claus coming to town.
Mm.
I remember that big old monster, the warlock-looking monster, scared everybody to death.
Mm.
But Chris Kringle needed him bad,
Mm-hmm.
and Chris gave him a gift and warmed him up, and he asked him could he help him.
Mm-hmm.
I think they put Chris in jail, and his girlfriend went at the time, but they were married, and said, how can you help me? He said, I don't have nothing left. All the stuff, my magic is gone.
Mm-hmm.
He said, but one thing I do have. He said, I have these seeds.
Mm-hmm.
And the woman said, well, what are these seeds? He said, you feed these seeds to the reindeer and make reindeer fly.
Mm-hmm.
And so she fed the seeds to the reindeer. And the reindeers was able to go, she flew the reindeers into the jail and got Chris and his group
Mm-hmm.
of elves and everything and flew them out. So,
I think I've seen that at 11 years old.
Yeah. Is there that in the Black American group? Is there something that can make people fly, make the Black American fly? Is there that safety net that hasn't been shown that needs to be?
We pray. I'm a Muslim, so, and praying Muslim. And there is a verse in the Quran that speaks about the people who are oppressed in the town, and they ask their God to help. Mm-hmm. Send someone from us to help us against the oppressor. I always believe, as my mama believed from Mississippi, she said, prayer is powerful. Mm-hmm. She said it's powerful. When we pray together, it's even more powerful and such. And I believe that Almighty God is gonna give us that magic back. And I believe that just as before,
Sure.
when those reindeers flew up in the sky, because the seed that's gonna come is gonna come from Almighty God, and He's gonna command it with us doing. We have to first do. We can't just sit back and just not do. And I believe that's gonna happen. Just like I'm sitting here
Sure.
saying, look, this is where we at.
Sure.
I'm not that smart. Right before I had this conversation with you, I was on the YouTube and I was watching a segment with Rowan Martin and brother Professor Omar Johnson
yeah,
and a few people, and they were talking, and this was like I guess somewhere before the election, and they were talking about something similar, just what we're talking about now, and of course, brother Omar, you ever hear where he's talked very strong, very pro-black, and with no
boundaries.
no boundary. He just
Yeah,
that's it.
just
You know.
like,
But at the end of the day, they all agree. They all agree that we have to, as a community, come back and look within ourselves. And I think, and when we go back to ourselves and go back to our God, and ask for our God, you know, in spirit and in might, to come back within, to be those elves or whatever you want to call it, to fly again. And the magic is when we come together. And we come together and we begin to start to look within ourselves. You're gonna see some things happen. And I believe, just like I'm talking, they're talking, other people around the country are talking. Now we gotta bring it together.
I think that what I'm getting from this conversation, Salaam, is that, and you kind of like a sportsman too. You look at sports, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, you go to basketball, football, and all that, right there, you know, all that stuff.
I play sports.
Yeah.
I watch sports.
Okay.
I
I think that what you're saying is that your team is losing.
Oh yeah.
You see your team losing
My team's losing bad.
bad, and you want to build up your team.
Yeah.
And I think to the people out there, I think that that's what SALAAM ISMIAL was saying, that his team is losing, and his team are the young black Americans, the ones that are dying in Chicago by record numbers. As we're making this speech, making this show here, probably 2 or 3 of them is dead right now. Those that's dying in New Jersey, that's dying all over, and that's going to jail and things. And your team is losing so much that you can't really stretch your arms no more. You got to come home because, you know, you got to come home. You got to come home, or you're gonna lose all the way. I think that's what you're saying.
Yes. And I appreciate this conversation. I know we got to wrap up, but I just want to say that as long as people like myself, yourself, and others spreading the message or what have you, not holding back on what we need to talk about,
Sure.
and come back at the table and go back to ourselves, I think we're going to be all right as a community. So moving ahead, we already know there's a beast out there called Donald Trump and all his people.
Yeah.
So we just know what we got to do now. Be mindful of that and keep and go back to black.
Go back to black. Okay. Well, we are in with Go Back to Black. Go back to Black America. I'm Zachariah Jackson, BASA News. Good night.